So let's talk about evaluating sources. As I've mentioned through several of the videos, we live in an information age. And that means that we have information coming at us at all angles, really. We have all the access we could ever want to information. In fact, we have more access than we will ever need. And so, what that highlights then is the fact that we need a way of being able to sift through or weed through that information. Not only on the topic level, which we've discussed already, that you need a way of being able to sift through and weed out information that doesn't fit your specific aim or topic in your paper or project, but also at the level of credibility. What are good and bad sources of information, or what is reliable information versus unreliable or less reliable information, or maybe even misinformation. So we need a process to be able to facilitate that sort of weeding out. And the hope is that you, as we go through one way in which you can do that, that you can take these skills, so you can take this thought process and apply it post-degree. And that's been the hope behind all of these videos, is that you will be able to take these skills that apply to thinking about information and sources and utilize them in your everyday life after your degree program is over. But this certainly applies more immediately to your academic studies here. So you need to begin to develop a habit of asking questions of your sources, of interrogating them, and a process for doing that. And one way that you can do that is by using something we call the CRAP test. So the CRAP test is an acronym that has a set of criteria built into it that allows or facilitates questions that you can ask of your sources as you're finding them and then beginning to read them and evaluate whether or not they are useful, credible for your particular projects or papers. So the C stands for currency. So again, this is the question behind this is this source current, and does it need to be? So that will all depend upon the type of paper that you're writing, the sort of research that you're doing. In many classes, a professor will ask you to only use the most recent or the latest research on a particular topic. So that might be something within the last 10 to 15 years. And in that case, then you need current information, and you're going to have to limit the results that you get from Summit or the catalog or any other source of information, a database. You're going to need to limit the scope of that to the last 10 to 15 years or whatever the range is that's been set for you. However, there are going to be many projects in which you're going to engage in a wide range of sources in terms of date or how old they are or current they are. So if you're doing something in the biblical or theological studies, you will often need to engage with texts that are hundreds of years old, in addition to the latest work reflecting on those texts. So it may be some combination of those two things. But it's an important question you need to ask. Is this source current, and does it need to be for the paper that I'm writing right now and the research that I'm doing? The R stands for relevance. Is this source useful in any way for your research? I think this one's easy, right? Is it relevant at all? You need to ask that question at the very beginning when you're first looking at a source. If it's not relevant at all, there's no point of relevance for your paper or project, then just toss it aside and move on. Again, we want to be effective and efficient in our research, and so you don't have time to linger on sources that aren't relevant in some way. So you just need to move them aside and keep moving forward in your search. The first A stands for authority. Can you trust that the authors are reliable? Can you trust that them to be reliable? So a way that you can think about this is, are the authors or the author of a particular source, is that author an authoritative voice on this particular topic? And a way of trying to get at that would be to look at their credentials, to see what sort of educational background they have or work they've done in the past, to see what sort of institutions that they're aligned with, see the sort of publishers that they work with and publish through, see what sort of voices they're interacting with. You'll come to find that oftentimes the authoritative voices on a particular topic will show up in many sources, right? There's almost like a circle of authoritative voices, and certainly new people kind of breaking in and others kind of fading out of that. But you'll start to see some of the same names start to pop up, and that's an indication, or at least a clue, that those are authoritative voices or authoritative figures in those conversations, those fields, and on those topics. Then the second A then is for accuracy. Is the information truthful? And maybe that's not the best way of thinking of it. More or less, we're getting to the issue of whether or not something's credible or reliable, right? Can I trust the information that I have in front of me? Does it come from a trustworthy source in terms of the author? Is it backed by trustworthy research, meaning the sources that they're interacting with are credible sources of information themselves, maybe research-based sources? They come from institutions that are engaged in that sort of activity. So again, you're digging deeper to find out what exactly comprises this information. Where did it come from, and can I trust it? And how can I know that I can trust it? And again, you can look at some of the credentials of people and institutions. You can see the people that they're interacting with. And you can also, as you're seeing who those voices are, see how they're interacting with one another. Maybe there is a view that some say totally misses the mark, and in fact is a piece of misinformation or bad information in that particular field or on that topic. So you can learn a lot by reading other voices and getting a sense for, again, who are the trustworthy and incredible sources of information on a particular topic or field. And then the last one, the P, is for purpose. Why was it written? And this is a really important question because this gets to the issue of bias. So if we're being honest, every one of us has bias. We all have presuppositions. We come to the table with presuppositions. We all already have a host of things that influence us, that have shaped us in a way. Our background, how the home we've come from, the education we've received, where that education came from, the sorts of institutions that we work for or we're a part of. And so these things shape our environment that we exist in. These things shape how authors write about topics. They shape how people understand topics and issues and fields of study. And so you need to be aware of that. You need to be mindful of that. We can never eliminate our biases, right? Because we're situated in contexts. And those contexts have a shaping, a formational effect on us. So we can never escape that. And that's not really the goal, is to say, I'm trying to find totally unbiased information, because you'll never find that, because everyone, again, has bias. What you're trying to do is just ask the question, what is the bias? Why exactly was this written? Or why is this author writing from this perspective in particular? Do they have an axe to grind because of something they've gone through, something they've seen, an interaction they've had with another scholar maybe? There's a whole host of things that you can ask, that you can use as tools to kind of probe those sources and find out what's the purpose behind this. And sometimes those biases can be detrimental. Like they color the writing so much that it's unhelpful. In most instances, you'll find out kind of what the angle of that author is, and that's helpful for maybe more fully understanding a topic or an issue. But what I want to do is just help you, again, take that step of asking the question. Just ask, why exactly was this written? So this again is a criteria. It's not the only criteria. It's not the end all be all in terms of evaluating sources, but it's one way in which you can take that step and go further and deeper into engaging your sources, engaging that conversation with those scholars, and really understanding not only what they've written, but why they've written it, and whether or not it's something that is a credible piece of information that you can use for your research purposes. Another way that you'll want to evaluate your sources is to distinguish the difference between a popular level source and a peer-reviewed source. So what exactly is the difference then? Well, a popular level source is an article or articles and books written by a wide variety of people, experts and non-experts, for a variety of purposes and audiences. So you can think of best-selling books oftentimes fit into this category. These are books that are written for the broader society, broader culture, meant to be consumed at various levels, so they don't get bogged down in technical language and that sort of thing, and are oftentimes not research-based. You can also think of something like Time magazine, for instance. So if you flip through Time, you'll notice a variety of types of writing in there, a lot of different types of articles. So you may have everything from an opinion piece to a human interest piece to a biographical sketch or story. And you'll notice that most, if not all, of those articles will not have any sort of citations connected to them, any sort of bibliography that ties back to sources, research-based source information, because that's not really the aim of what they're trying to do. They may be written to move you in a certain way, which doesn't mean they're not accurate necessarily, but without the work, it's hard to know exactly what is accurate and what's not. You have to work a little harder to determine that. In addition to that, there is no real vetting process, or there's a lower level, I should say, vetting process. So, an article might get turned into an editor who will look at it and edit it for grammar and style, maybe a few details here and there, and then they'll push it out and publish it. Versus peer-reviewed sources. So peer-reviewed sources are articles or books written by professionals and experts in their field for the academic community, and I would say primarily for the academic community, certainly more broadly than that as well, but is mostly or most often used by academics and people who are engaged in scholarly conversations. So these articles or books will have lengthy citations. You'll see lengthy bibliographies at the end of them, showing the work, showing the people that they're interacting with. So again, it raises less questions because it's showing you the voices and the people and where the information is coming from. In addition to that, though, these sources go through a vetting process. So an author will write a book or an article, they'll turn it in to the publisher, and then the publisher will send, or an editor, and they'll send that out to a variety of other experts in that same field or on that same topic or issue. And those experts, those scholars, will read over that source, they'll mark it up, they'll leave comments, they'll interact with it, they'll push back, they'll encourage, and then they'll send all that feedback back. And then the editor will send that to the original author, and the author will read over that, and they'll refine their work, and then they'll turn it back in, and it may go through that process again or several times before it eventually is published. And so what you get then is this kind of refining process where a book or an article has been scrutinized, has been criticized, has been looked over and evaluated maybe multiple times over before it actually even reaches your hands or reaches your eyes as you're reading it. And so what ends up happening then is you have a higher level of credibility and reliability with these types of sources because they've gone through this refining process. These are the sorts of sources that you're going to want to use, that your professors are looking for, and what scholarly academic work requires. So you're going to want to, when you're in Summon, click the scholarly peer review filter and look for these, search for these kinds of sources and utilize them in your research and your work. So these are some things to think about as you are finding sources and then trying to determine whether or not you're going to use these and how you could use these types of sources. As you're going to engage in these sort of scholarly conversations, these are the sorts of things and questions you need to be asking of your sources so that you can fully engage in the conversation, but also that you can find the quality information that you need for your research.